Hello, I'm Robert Verrill, a teacher at the Insight School of Art, and I'm going to be showing you a simple way to make a watercolour painting. In this session I'm going to show how to paint a single flower. So I'm going to do a very quick drawing outline, only really putting in the essential lines, certainly no detail, but looking really carefully at the way the petals move, the way they turn over on each other, on themselves, the way you can see one side and then the other. So really just drawing whatever you can see. And I'm doing it quite large because I'm going to be using a wet on wet technique, which gives us nice fuzzy edges, but you need quite a big area for that. Always when you're drawing, the rule is just draw what you see, draw the shapes that you see, not what you think you see, because what you actually see is a lot more interesting than what you could imagine. Now I'm going to do wet on wet here. That means I have to wet part of the paper that I want to put the paint into, and that will spread and give me quite exciting blends of colours, because there are no hard edges between pink tones and creamy white tones and greens and yellows. They're all kind of mixed in together. The paint I'm going to use is two blues, cobalt, ultramarine, a warm cadmium yellow, a little bit of lemon yellow, and certainly some alizarin crimson and some maroon, because I can see lots of pinky marks in there. I'm using a flat brush, a wideish flat brush, and I'm going to wet the area that I want to put the paint into. But first I'm going to mix the paint that I will put into that area. If I add a bit more to that and put a bit of crimson in there, maybe a little bit of blue. I'm getting pinks that I think I can see. And then I'm going to drop some paint in to some wet areas, okay? If I wet an area in the middle of this, I'm only wetting the area where I want the paint to go to. So wherever I stop the wetness on the edge of a line there, it will not go any further than that. And as I drop the paint in, you can see how it's already spreading into the rest of the leaf, and I can come back, the rest of the petal, and I can come back and add a bit more to that. I can put other colours in there. I'm actually going to put some green in the middle as well, so if I wet this area here, and I'm just going to drop some green in there, in the centre, just let it expand and spread into the other colours I've got going there. So wet another area and put some pink tones in there as well. Let's have a little bit more water in there. If I get that green off my brush. Use a little bit more crimson this time, I think. And if I drop crimson into where I've just wet it, I can see how it spreads into the area that I have painted, but won't go, wet I should say, it spreads into the area that I wet but won't go any further. If I take that paint off there, I can spread it with my brush a little bit. Take a little bit more red on there, and if I wet another area, I'll work my way around. Putting a little bit more crimson in here, just going to drop it in a bit more loosely. I can see a streak down the middle of that petal, which I want to pick up on. If I use a bit more pigment in some places, I'll just get a very much stronger area, and in some places it is that strong. Now I can already see I've got green at the top of this petal here, just notice that. So if I take my crimson off, then I can go into it with a bit of green. Let's take my cobalt again and some lemon yellow, probably more yellow than cobalt. drop some colour in there because I want to mix the green in with it and see that spread into the pinks. Some green to start with in the middle of this petal here. I'll come back to that just there. Let's put a bit of green at the top there. A bit of faint green, it's not very strong green. Okay. So I'm getting all kinds of naturalistic colours, and again I'm going to put a little bit of red through the middle of that. That area I just wet earlier on, I'll let that merge in together and give me a lovely blended area. I think I need a little bit darker on that edge. Wet through here, put some green. I've got a very strong green coming down the middle of that. So we'll let that merge in. I'll put a little bit more cadmium yellow in there. So I'm getting quite a loose effect. Now I'm going to try some wet on dry now. So I'm not going to wet any more areas because that's quite loose. I'm going to put some definite pink areas in where I haven't wet it. Which will give me some contrasting colours. I think it needs to be a little bit darker at the back here because this is with a bit more brown. This is in shadow under here, so I'm going to go a little bit darker at the back here, give it a bit of contrast because it's quite light at the moment. And some darker bits in the middle of here as well. Now where I've got the green stamen in the middle there, I'm going to go quite strong on the colour. Bring it around there, put a bit of brown because the end of these is quite brown, quite dark. So wet on wet's quite exciting, and the more you build up, the more it appears. Dark green I can see in the middle there, so the middle bit is quite dark. Already it's starting to come together. I think underneath this here is a different colour again because it's quite dark there. So a few more different tones, contrasting tones. Just building it up, looking all the time, but also putting on work things that you feel are right. I think this one here, this bit of petal here, probably needs to be a bit lighter than what's underneath it. Let's darken that up under there. That's still wet, so I can put some paint into that. I want to leave it quite fresh. I don't want to overdo it. I don't have to paint every bit of paper. With watercolour you can let white areas glow through, but the last thing I'm going to do is to put some flecks of paint on just to mimic the little flecks inside the leaves there, and inside the petals I should say. And the way I'm going to do that is just to take an old brush, an old toothbrush, put some paint on it, fairly wettish paint but dark, fairly strong, and then I'm going to do some directional flicks, not too much, I don't want to overdo it, but some flicks just give it a more naturalistic look. And that's one method of painting a single flower.